Joining us to look back on what was a fantastic weekend's cricket was Melinda Farrell. Melinda, thank you for joining us on the show.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's very exciting at the moment. As you said, we really do have a ding-dong of an Ashes series now.
Yeah, I think I think it was a Friday lunchtime when England were bowled out for 237. A lot of England fans in particular may have feared the worst, that the worst aspects of baseball were coming back to haunt them, and that they were going to be completely out on their feet in this Ashes series. They've now gotten something to dig their teeth into over the course of the next week and a bit before we head to Old Trafford. What was your feeling at that point when England were bowled out for 237 in that first innings and things did look a bit grim?
Well, I didn't really know. I guess I was back at Headingley, so I was almost having a PTSD kind of physical reaction to being back there, because in 2019, that last day completely shredded any nerves I had. I thought they'd all grown back again, but during the course of this Ashes, they've been through the mangler a few times. And we know that England, particularly in the past sort of 16 months, have been great chasers in the fourth innings. They almost did that at Lord's with that brilliant innings of Ben Stokes. And I think it was probably on the fourth day yesterday at Headingley when Ben Stokes was out for 13. That was a point where I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be a real challenge. And I'd always thought during the week that it would be really good for England to be able to win a match without Ben Stokes, because he's such a talisman for them. He's pulled out those heroics on so many occasions. And I think actually it was really good for England that they did win it without him. His first innings runs were obviously incredibly important. He was one of only 4 players to make more than 50 runs. So they were hard to come by on what was a very good test pitch at Headingley. But to see the maturity with which Harry Brook composed his innings will give them a lot to be very happy about. To see the calmness of Chris Wokes when Australia were bowling short at him, because that's where he's perhaps been a bit more vulnerable, and to see the sheer funky, sparky joy of Mark Wood and the way he came out and again hooked Pat Cummins for 6. All of those things, I think England will take a lot out of those as they go forward, because you know what? This series has been so close. No team has ever been really dominating the other. It could be 3-0 either way, but for a few sliding doors moments, it could be 2-1 either way. So this whole series is being decided on a whole heap of moments that at just very fine margins could tip it the other way.
Yeah, like we go back to that first test at Edgbaston, we were on air essentially as that was reaching its conclusion, going down to pretty much the final over there. You look at the second test as well and the fine margins that it was decided by, and then with Mark Wood's 16 yesterday, which was like, it's a 16 that's contained so many cheeky shots, so many bits of luck as well. We go back to that incident involving Alex Carey from the Lord's Test seems to have had a bit of a hangover here, and none more so yesterday than when he tried to chase a ball down at third man. That was like completely beyond him, and it was a brain fart moment from a wicketkeeper to be heading back that far to try and take a catch when it looked like his third man would probably be better served to take it. But it seems like that was part of the hangover from Lord's, is that he wanted to supersede that moment, I guess, and have something else to be remembered by. And those lines that were uttered to him by, was it Stuart Broad said to him, that's what you're going to be remembered for. He seemed to want to prove people wrong, to the detriment of Australia's wanting to bowl England out yesterday.
Perhaps. We haven't spoken to Alex Carey since then, so not really sure kind of how he's been dealing. It would have been a better catch for Scott Boland to run in from the boundary and take. And again, we talk about the fine margins. And Alex Carey has actually been excellent with the gloves throughout the series. And until Headingley, he made really, really valuable contributions with the bat. So perhaps it's all rattled him a bit, the massive amount of controversy. There was a ridiculous controversy. Not what isn't even a controversy, but we're calling it Barbergate just for the hell of it, where a rumor circulated and ended up in the papers that he'd basically gone to a barber and got a haircut and hadn't paid. And then, it was just a ludicrous story. It was a rain day story and probably got legs. But, when you've got the Australian media manager having to send several clarifications on what had actually happened at the barbers, it wasn't even him that was there. But maybe, this is what happens with Ashes series and that the stumping at Lords. Everything gets blown up, the smallest things that probably just no one would pay attention to in any other test series, just gain traction and balloon into this massive deal. And it must be quite intimidating for the players, no matter how calm and level you want to be. It must be difficult to shut out all the noise. But overall, he's had a really good series. It's just there's not a lot between these two teams. So as we go into this fourth test now, all the players are going to go away for a bit. They'll have some time away, recuperate, recover, see how they are physically, hopefully refresh mentally. And we'll see just how calm they are now, because Australia are they're in the driver's seat of this. They only have to win one more test to retain the Ashes. They want to win them outright. So they desperately want to make sure that they don't let it slip like they did in 2019, where they retained the Ashes but didn't win them outright. So, yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see, because England will feel now that they've got the wind in their sails, and they've done it in the fourth innings without having to rely on Ben Stokes.
Prior to Headingley, you wrote this open letter in praise of or in support of Bazball, as it's become known. Given how tight these tests have actually been, the first two in particular, are you surprised that there's been that level of criticism for it?
Yes and no. Look, I do feel like the obituaries for Bazball have been written by a lot of people, and the headlines of, the day Bazball died. I do think that there's a certain amount of cynicism around, ready to take aim for it, because there are some people who have thought it's been great, but they're not 100% on board with it, and I can understand why as well. Sometimes I think that the way that the players have spoken about what they're doing, when it's all, the results don't matter, and we're expressing ourselves and all of that, it doesn't go down well with people who just want to beat Australia. They don't care about whether or not it's entertaining, as long as at the end of the day, they beat Australia. It's a really, really strong compulsion over here to feel that way. So it doesn't really surprise me, but I do think, there's no doubt that it has captured the imagination. And without what Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum have empowered players to do, I don't know that we would have seen that innings from Harry Brook, or seen what Mark Wood came in and did. There's a lot in it, and it's not always going to work, and they're still going to make mistakes. That's the thing. They've dropped a lot of catches in this series. They've perhaps made some tactical errors at times, but you're going to do that no matter what style of cricket you're playing. And if they'd taken the chance, even half the chances that they've put down, we could be in a situation where they are 3-0. So sometimes I think, it is more about the execution of the basics. Australia got a lot of the basics right in the first two tests that helped get them over the line. And that's perhaps more of the issue, I think, looking back on it. But look, the whole country is talking about this Ashes series. People around the world are watching this. I mean, you're interested in it. So everybody is. It's incredibly good for Test cricket. Would we be getting this kind of exciting series without the way England are playing, if they were still going about things the way they used to? I'm not sure we would. Sure, there's I guess they could refine things and get better at doing certain things, but that's all part of it as well, isn't it? Nobody, as Ben Stokes said after the game, he's never met anyone who's figured out cricket, and so much is said in hindsight looking back. And you're never going to know what would have happened if you did something the other way. And I think he's right. I don't think anyone has really conquered Test cricket and how to go about it completely.
Is some of the scepticism around it kind of born from maybe traditionalists who have seen white ball cricket erode the level of interest that there's been in the full Test match series, not just ones involving England, but generally across the board, and that any straying from the traditional, because let's be honest, cricket is an inherently traditional game, any straying from that course is always going to be met with a great deal of scepticism, particularly if you're leaning on white ball tactics, really.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes, particularly initially, a lot of what they were doing with so-called Bazball was a bit misunderstood. It was, people just thought it was about going out there and bish, bash, bosh, belting the ball about with abandon. And I think that's definitely a simplification of it. It's much more than that. It's about with ball, when you're fielding, it's about taking wickets. How do we take 10 wickets? We're not going to do draws. So how do we take them, whether it be in this over or this spell or this bowling partnership or this session? And so being willing to try and think out of the box to how do we move the game to a position where we can win it. And with batting, a lot of it is about trying to identify the moments to attack and then really attacking, but also being able to absorb pressure at times. And I go back to that Harry Brook innings. I mean, he obviously played a bit of a wild hook and got a top edge and was out eventually, but he'd basically done the job at that point in getting them close enough that they could get over the line, albeit it still felt a bit hairy. But he did show a lot of maturity in that. And the weird thing is, that chase, I think they chased it down at 5 and over, even though it felt like there was a lot of mature batting there. So sometimes it just feels like you're a bit discombobulated because you almost don't realise how fast it's going. It must be very hard to play against. But yeah, there's always going to be that traditional element that doesn't like it. I don't think that Ben Stokes, Brendan McCullum and the rest of the players are that bothered about the traditionalists. I think they want to speak to people who are watching and enjoying it and kids. It sounds so idealistic, and there is a lot of cynicism, isn't there? And when anyone wants to be idealistic, there's always someone who's ready to knock them down. And it does sometimes feel a little bit that way with the way they're playing. It's still okay to criticise it and find fault with it as well. But I personally just don't feel that even if they lose the next 2 tests, that they should throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's
almost like, in terms of, it's realigning the aggression from where it is ordinarily lain within Test cricket. Like if you think back to Ashes series in the 70s and you have Lillian Thompson going at the English openers, trying to basically take them out as either physically or in terms of numbers, whatever way you want to look at it. And then into the West Indies teams of the 80s and early 90s with Corny Walsh and Curtly Ambrose, like that level of aggression and trying to curtail an innings with the bat is no different to trying building a score using slightly more aggressive tactics. It's just the other side of the coin, at least to the layman like me.
Yeah, and also, look, cricket has changed since then. T20 has changed cricket in the kinds of shots that players have mastered now. It's changed it in some of the spectacular fielding that we see. It's changed it in terms of some of the variations that we see in bowling as well. All of those things have kind of really developed through T20 cricket, and we see more of those. We see shots played now in Test cricket that we wouldn't have seen 30 years ago, and part of that is that players actually actually practice those shots now. So they execute them with confidence. So while it may look rash and a bit crazy to some of us watching, they actually feel quite comfortable and composed in playing some of those shots. And look, the other thing, a big part of what they're trying to do is back the players to a point where they're not looking over their shoulder, and they're not afraid of taking a risk or backing themselves to play certain ways. And that's trying to remove the fear of failure that is a real key to what they're doing. And I look at someone like Zach Crawley, who made some really valuable contributions. And you can see why England back him, because he looks so good. He's sort of, you feel like he's going to get to about 30 or so, and then he's going to be in and keep going, because he plays some absolutely glorious shots that often go for none or one, but then he gets out. And he's a player, though, that I feel like if England can keep working with him and unlock his potential, even though he's had a good run already, I just feel like if they can, he could be someone who is an incredibly good opener who can do a lot of damage for England, particularly in the first innings when he gets going.
As they head to actually, I wanted to talk about Moeen Ali, because he was obviously recalled for this test, and then we had that spell between tea and stumps on Friday when he took 2 wickets and 2 fairly significant ones as well. Given his in-out nature with test cricket over the past while, the fact that he was recalled for this series and then brought in at Headingley, that was a massive afternoon for him on Friday.
It was, and he only went for a bit over 2 and over as well, which he said afterwards was probably the thing he was proudest of, that he was able to bowl so economically. And I think was it a 17 over spell or something, but he bowled really well, and he's still got that cut on his finger. It's partly healed, but the fact that they were able to rely on him, whereas Australia, they were missing. They really missed Nathan Lyon. I think Todd Murphy only got 2 overs on that final day. And even though conditions weren't really conducive to spin, and Pat Cummins said afterwards that was why he only got 2 overs, there is no doubt in my mind that if Nathan Lyon had been in that 11, that he would have bowled a lot more overs on the last day. Pat Cummins has bowled a mountain of overs compared to all the other Australians. So that just shows a difference in what Moeen Ali was able to bring. He put himself up. He went to them the previous night when they were obviously having a bit of a conundrum with Ollie Pope being out injured, and it was they like to sort of protect Joe Root. He likes batting at number 4. He does better at number 4 than number 3. Some people don't like that at all and think he should be batting there, but to have Moeen Ali say he went to him and said, why don't you give me a bat at 3? I want to bat at 3. And Ben Stokes loves that. That's the sort of selflessness that he loves in Moeen Ali, a player who has batted everywhere from, I think, 1 to 9 for England during his test career. It didn't pay off. He almost looked to be in 2 minds, actually, when he came in and batted. But at the end of the day, they will see that as, okay, that's a really positive sign for Moeen Ali, and I think they'll feel pleased with the contributions that he made in the game, albeit that it wasn't with a lot of runs. Even
though they're still trailing in the series, does the fact that England have won this test now almost relieve the pressure in a perverse way, that they know that they have a foothold now and that they know that they've proved that this form of cricket can work, that they head to Old Trafford knowing that we can give this a right rattle here and force it to a 5th, and who knows then? Well, after the loss at Lord's, I actually asked Ben Stokes in the press conference about the position they were in, and he gave this quite extraordinary answer that I get, though. He said, the way we play our cricket, we're in the perfect position for us. And I think, what he meant is that they basically, when their backs are to the wall, is when they're most able to dig deep and bring out special performances. If you look at how many
tests they have won since they started playing this way by chasing down record scores or, what seemed to be impossible fourth innings totals. That's been a real feature. Or when, in Pakistan, where they have to get 10 wickets and it's a flat pitch, and it seems like there's no way in this world that you'd be able to take 10 wickets there or 20 wickets to win a test. They've been able to find ways to do that. So I think that's what he meant. It's that pressure really brings out something in them. And then he was asked about that comment again after the Headingley test. He basically said that doesn't change. Now they've still got to win everything. It's like being in a World Cup, isn't it? You've just got to keep winning to get to the end and get on that run and get that roll on. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they go. And especially, I guess, since they've got a break now where they go away and they come back, you almost wonder if they were going straight into Old Trafford, would that be better? But then again, with all the tired bodies, with the amount of cricket that they've all played since the start of June, I can tell you, I've done 6 test matches since the start of June, and I've just been watching, and I'm exhausted. So goodness knows how these players are doing it.
The scheduling of this has come under criticism, though, as well, hasn't it? That it hasn't been given enough time to breathe, and that the injuries that we've seen to players like Nathan Lyon can really come as no surprise, given that the rigours that these players are under.
Yeah, it is a ridiculously compressed series. And we're seeing that Ollie Robinson has got some back spasms, so we're not sure about him. Josh Hazlewood wasn't quite right before this one. Ollie Pope's obviously got the injury. Then Nathan Lyon. You look at the other bowlers as well, and you just don't know who's kind of going to be in the best shape as well. It is ridiculous, and I wish it wasn't quite so compact, and it is because they want a clear window for the 100 this year, which won't happen next year in England. I think there are tests scheduled in September, and that's been forced by the T20 World Cup, which takes out all of June. So they physically can't fit in five test matches, 6 test matches in a month. But yeah, it's not ideal, and I just hope that we don't see any other injuries. Thank goodness there is this little bit of a break now, so that hopefully any niggles can be put to right with a little bit of rest, but we'll just have to wait and see how they pull up.
There's been injuries and there's been form as well has come under, certain players have come under a bit of question for that, and Johnny Bairstow is probably the one that stands out, I guess, because he's such a totemic figure in that side and has been for the past while, but it seems like his place is going to be firmly under threat going to Old Trafford. So
that will be interesting. It was quite contentious at the start of the summer when they brought Johnny Bairstow back, obviously off a horrendous injury. It came at an awful time for him, and everybody felt sorry for him at that point. But then Harry Brook came along, and he was so exciting as well. Then the decision to drop Ben Foakes, who is, as Ben Stokes has described him in the past, as best keeper in the world. That was really caused a lot of debate over here. And the fact that Johnny Bairstow has dropped and quite a few catches so far in this series and not been able to get going with the bat has kind of highlighted that. No one doubts his class and his contributions. Was he completely he was fit, but I guess match fit and back to his best. He has had kind of patches in his career where he's been brilliant and then he's been off a little bit and then brilliant. And he was on such a brilliant run for so long. But then, I do think as well, part of this is they do like to back people in. So I don't know what they'll do. I have a sort of feeling that they would stick with him. Maybe there's another way, another balance that it brings a bit of a twist in the tail. They're not above some kind of funky selection at some point. So we'll just have to see. But it would certainly, I'd put it this way, if Johnny Bairstow has the gloves and bats at Old Trafford, you would feel that he needs to make a real contribution with either bat or with gloves.
At this far a remove from that fourth test, would you dare call it?
No way. I wouldn't dare call it. If it goes to 5 days, I wouldn't call it at the end of the fourth day. That's what's been so brilliant about it. It has just seesawed the whole way through. You just never feel, we haven't had a thrashing. We haven't had a time. I suppose Lords was the one time where you probably thought Australia were the most on top, but then while Ben Stokes was batting, you just couldn't put it past him, really. For me, it's just impossible to call. Australia must be favourites because they're in front. So that is hugely helpful for them. England can't afford any mistakes. They have to play their best cricket in the next two games. But look, who knows? It'll be interesting to see for me at Old Trafford, where traditionally that conditions have been more conducive to spin, whether that might be a time where a difference opens up. If Moeen Ali is able to contribute more and we see Todd Murphy go for quite a few, because they will go for him, and they have, and he didn't bowl a lot there. So Australia like going in with a spinner. I know people are saying, well, maybe drop him and have the four seamers and then have Travis Head and Steve Smith or even Marnus Labuschagne contribute. They like having a frontline spinner, Australia. So I'd be surprised if they left him out. That could be a very interesting thing coming into it. Also, the other thing for Moeen Ali, I think it's probably important to just acknowledge how good Mark Wood's bowling was as well. And when you've got him coming at you from one end, speed's incredible, 95 miles an hour. It's just incredible to watch him coming back and bowling with that kind of pace. That, and then having Moeen Ali at the other end, I think Moeen really benefited from having someone of Mark Wood's speed, because then you have players going for him, and he does pick up wickets when players try and take him out of the attack.
It's teed up beautifully. I can't wait to see what unfolds at Old Trafford and the Oval over the course of the next couple of tests, and we'll let you rest and stake out local barbers as well between now and Wednesday week. Melinda Farrell, thank you.
Yeah, I do need a haircut, I have to say. I'll make sure I go to the cash machine.
Make sure you pay. That's case in point. Take it easy.